The Book of Alugah, Part 1, Judas Iscariot. In those days, after the betrayal of the Son of Man, Judas Iscariot was filled with anguish, and his soul was burdened with a great darkness. And he went out into the wilderness, away from the sight of men, and found a desolate tree. There he took a rope and fastened it around his neck, seeking to end the torment within him. But as he cast himself from the tree, his life did not depart from him, for the Lord would not allow him to die. And behold, a voice thundered from the heavens, saying, Judas, son of perdition, you have betrayed the blood of the covenant and sought to escape your guilt, but you shall not find rest. Although his neck bore the mark of the rope, his body remained whole, and his soul was bound to the earth, cursed to bear his sin for all eternity. And the earth trembled beneath him, and a shadow descended upon Judas. The voice of the Lord spoke again, Cursed shall you be for eternity, a wanderer among men, yet never among the living. And the blood of the Son, which Judas had sold for 30 pieces of silver, cried out from the earth against him. Then the Lord placed his hand upon Judas, and his flesh grew cold, and his heart ceased to beat. His eyes burned with an unholy fire, and his teeth grew sharp like daggers. And the Lord said, As you have consumed the bread of betrayal, so shall you hunger for the blood of men, yet it shall never satisfy. Thus was Judas transformed into a creature of the night, cursed to roam the earth until the end of days. And Judas wandered into the cities of men, hiding in the shadows, for the light of the sun scorched his flesh, and he hungered greatly, but the bread of men turned to ash in his mouth, and the wine became bitterness. So he turned to the blood of the living, and in their lifeblood found a fleeting reprieve from his torment. Yet each life he took added to his anguish, for the weight of his sin grew heavier with every drop he consumed. As he prowled the alleys and the forest, Judas was torn between his primal hunger and the remnants of his human soul. At times he would linger, watching his prey with a pang of longing, remembering the fellowship he once knew. But the gnawing hunger would overtake him, and he would strike, his victims' cries echoing in his ears long after the deed was done. When the blood of his victims coursed through him, it gave him strength and fleeting solace, but the soon despair returned, heavier than before. Judas began to fear himself, for he became a predator to those he once called brethren, and his reflection in still waters revealed nothing but absence of corporeal form. Each night, as he succumbed to his hunger, he whispered prayers for mercy, though his voice was choked with bitterness and doubt. Lord, if this curse is my punishment, grant me strength to endure. But if there be no hope, why prolong this torment? The heavens remained silent, and Judas's cries faded into the darkness, unanswered and unheard. And Judas came to understand the depth of his curse, for he was neither living nor dead, a vessel of wrath. He sought out the disciples of the Lord, hoping to find absolution, but their reactions only caused him further torment. When Judas first appeared, they did not recognize him, for his form was shrouded and his voice trembled with anguish. Yet as he drew nearer, the unholy fire in his eyes and the pallor of his skin revealed the depth of his curse, causing them to recoil in fear. Some whispered among themselves, questioning if it was truly Judas or a specter of evil sent to test them, while others turned away, unable to bear the sight of his anguish. When he approached Peter, the rock of the church, Peter said, Away from me, Judas, for your betrayal is still fresh in our hearts. You bear the mark of the accursed, and I cannot help you. Turning to John, Judas pleaded, Beloved of the Lord, remember his mercy. I beg you, intercede for me. But John, though sorrowful, said, Your grief is great, but your sin is greater. I dare not defy the will of God. And even Thomas, who had doubted the resurrection, looked upon Judas with fear and said, You have seen the risen Lord, and yet turned against him. What hope is there for you? And Judas wept bitterly, crying out, Lord, have mercy upon me, for I cannot bear this torment. But the heavens were silent, and no angel came to his aid. And he dwelt in the shadows of the holy places, listening to the words of the disciples, though he dared not approach. And in his heart grew a yearning to atone, though he saw no path to redemption. In his despair, Judas resolved to do what he could, though his soul was damned. Yet his cursed hunger for blood and the memory of his betrayal warred within him. At times he would look upon men and women with a flicker of hope, thinking perhaps their lives might bring him solace. But the insatiable hunger would claw at his mind, urging him towards darkness. He wandered the earth, seeking out the lost and the forsaken, guiding them away from evil where he could, though he himself could not enter the kingdom. Often he would stand in the shadows, watching the innocent and their prayers, their faith the balm and torment to his fractured soul. And he came upon a woman who was cast out of her village, accused of witchcraft and condemned to die. And Judas, moved with pity, intervened, driving away her accusers with the terror of his countenance. Yet the woman, seeing his cursed form, fled in fear, crying, "Demon, be gone!" Each rejection deepened Judas's despair. The loneliness pressed upon him like a weight that grew heavier with every act of kindness misunderstood and every fleeting hope dashed by his monstrous nature. In his heart, bitterness began to take root, and he whispered to the night, "If mercy is denied to me, then let me bring darkness upon the world. If I am to be cursed, let my curse touch all who tread this earth." Thus despair gave birth to wrath, and Judas turned his heart towards vengeance, swearing to spread his suffering among mankind as a testament to his unyielding torment. And Judas journeyed to the far corners of the earth where no man had tread, seeking the wisdom of the ancient ones. He came upon a hermit who dwelt in a cave, a man of great age and understanding. And the hermit said unto him, "Your burden is heavy and your path is dark, yet there is no sin too great for the mercy of the Lord, if you seek it with a contrite heart." But Judas replied, "I am cursed beyond redemption, for the blood of the righteous stains my hands." And the hermit said, "Then seek the Lord still, for his ways are not ours, and his grace is infinite." Judas sat by the hermit's fire, the warmth, the painful reminder of the light he could no longer feel within his soul. The hermit shared tales of sinners redeemed, recounting stories of men who had walked the path of darkness and found the light through repentance. But as Judas listened, his heart was torn. He desired the hope of the hermit offered, but the weight of his curse and the hunger that clawed at his soul whispered that such grace was beyond his reach. "Do you not see?" Judas cried. "The Lord himself has turned from me. He speaks only through silence and wrath. How can I seek what is denied me?" The hermit, though filled with sorrow, replied, "The silence of God is not his absence. Even in judgment his mercy endures. You carry a great burden, but the Lord's hand is never far. If only you would reach for it." Yet Judas, consumed by his despair, could not see the hand extended toward him. As dawn approached, he rose to leave. The hermit called after him, "Remember this, wanderer, even the cursed may find peace if they seek it with a true heart." But Judas, walking into the shadows, whispered, "Peace is a dream for the living. For me, there is only darkness." Part 2. The Curse of the Silver Coins. And thus Judas continued his wandering, carrying his curse as a testimony to the justice and mercy of God, and he whispered warnings to those who walked in the path of betrayal, though he remained unseen. And the 30 pieces of silver which Judas had cast away in his torment lay scattered in the field of blood. And it was said that whoever found one of these pieces was stricken with misfortune, for the coins bore the mark of Judas's betrayal and the curse of the Lord. Farmers who tilled the field found their crops withered. Merchants who kept the coins saw their wares spoil, and even kings who possessed them found their thrones shaken. Among these there was a king named Antiochus, who sought power and riches. Hearing of the cursed silver, he became consumed with a dark obsession to possess them, believing they held some secret to eternal dominion. Antiochus set forth his spies, warriors, and thieves to scour the land for coins, offering unimaginable rewards to those who brought them to him. He turned against friends, allies, and even kin, casting all into ruin in his relentless pursuit. When the coins were finally gathered, Antiochus handed them with a mixture of triumph and reverence, ignoring the warnings of his advisors and the omens that darkened the skies. But no sooner had he stored the silver in his vaults than the kingdom began to fall. His armies were defeated, his allies turned against him, and a plague swept through the lands. In his despair and madness, Antiochus sailed to the ends of the earth, casting silver into the ocean, hoping to escape the curse. Yet his ship was struck by a great tempest, and he was lost, leaving his name a byword for ruin. Yet the coins did not rest in the depths. Mariners and treasure seekers, hearing tales of Antiochus' treasures, sought them in the ocean's depths. One day, a diver uncovered the coins, their gleam undiminished by the years. Thanking them a blessing, he brought them to the shore, where they were traded among merchants and kings. But wherever the coins went, calamity followed. Ships sank, cities burned, and the hands that held them were struck with madness. The coins, it was said, bore an elemental curse, spreading the shadow of Judas's betrayal across generations. And so the cursed silver, carried by the greed and folly of men, continued to sow despair, its power undiminished, awaiting the final day of judgment. In the quiet village there was a farmer named Elias, a humble man who toiled from dawn till dusk, content with the fruits of his labor and the love of his family. One fateful day, as Elias plowed his field, his blade struck something hard. Digging into the soil, he uncovered a silver coin, its surface shining as though untouched by time. Believing it a blessing from heaven, Elias rejoiced, for his family had long struggled against poverty. He took the coin to the market and traded it for food and seed, marveling at his newfound fortune. Yet from that day forward his life began to unravel. The crops that once grew lush and abundant withered overnight, their roots blackened and brittle. The livestock, which had been healthy and strong, fell ill, their cries haunting the night until they perished one by one. Elias's wife and children, who once brought him joy, now seemed distant, their laughter replaced by arguments and tears. Desperation gripped Elias's heart, and he hung to the silver coins, convinced that they held the key to his salvation. Yet the more he held to it, the heavier it seemed, as though the weight of each coin bore down on his soul. His nights became plagued by dreams of darkness and fire, and he heard whispers in the wind, accusing him of greed and betrayal. Consumed by despair, Elias withdrew from his family, spreading his days alone in the field where he had found the coin. One evening, unable to endure the torment any longer, Elias took a length of rope and went to the ancient oak at the end of his land. As the sun set, casting its final rays upon the earth, Elias hung himself from the tree, the silver coin clutched tightly in his hand. And it was said that his body was found. The coin had vanished, leaving only a faint, chilling laughter echoing through the branches of the oak. Thus the curse of the silver continued, claiming all who sought to possess it, a reminder of Judas's betrayal and the darkness it unleashed upon the world. Section 3. Prophecy. And the Lord revealed to the prophet Alugah the depths of the curse wrought by Judas and the silver coins, a darkness that would stretch across the generations until the day of judgment. Behold, Alugah spoke of wars that would rise like storms upon the earth, nation rising against nation, driven by greed and the lust for power. And in the heart of every great war the silver would gleam, passed from hand to hand, spreading corruption and discord. Kingdoms would fall, their rulers consumed by paranoia and betrayal, their people scattered like chaff before the wind. The blood of the innocent would soak the earth, and the cries of the fallen would ascend to heaven unanswered, for the curse of Judas silenced the voices of the righteous. And Alugah saw the fields wither under the weight of the curse. The crops which once brought sustenance and joy would rot in the soil. The roots would twist and turn away from the nourishment of the earth, for the very ground bore the stain of the silver's malevolence. And the rivers would run dry, their banks cracking under the weight of an unrelenting sun, for even the heavens turned their faces away from the accursed earth. Birds fell silent, and the beasts of the fields wasted away, leaving desolation in their way. Men would barter their souls for a morsel of bread, but no sustenance could satisfy their hunger, for it was not the body but the spirit that the curse consumed. Villages would descend into chaos as neighbors turned against one another, driven mad by hunger and despair. The rich who hoarded their treasures would find their gold and silver tainted, their wealth turned to dust in their grasp. Merchants who carried the cursed coins would see their ships sink, their canvases vanish, and their fortunes crumble like sand through their fingers. Mothers would weep for their children, their lullabies replaced by cries of lamentation, and fathers would curse the heavens, yet none would see relief. Famine spread its cruel hand to every corner of the earth, sparing none, for all had shared in the greed that spread the silver. And in the darkest corners of the world, whispers rose of the cursed coins that their touch brought ruin, and they could not be cast away, for the curse would follow the hand that sought to rid itself of the silver. And Alugah spoke of a great plague that would rise from the depths, a pestilence carried upon the winds, touching all who had claimed the cursed silver. Their flesh would wither, lesions spreading like fire across their bodies, and their breaths would falter, rasping in agony as though the very air betrayed them. The sickness would begin with the faintest whisper of pain, yet would swiftly overwhelm, consuming even the strongest. Cities would be emptied, their streets filled with the wails of the dying and the silence of the dead. The marketplaces, once filled with the bustle of life, would echo hollowly with the cries of despair, and the temples would stand abandoned, their altars darkened with ash. The rulers who once sought the silver for their glory would find their courts abandoned, their empires reduced to ruin. Their servants, once loyal, would flee in terror, for even the touch of the afflicted carried the curse. And the plague would not relent, for it bore the mark of Judas, and its purpose was to mirror the despair and anguish of his eternal curse. Even the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky would fall victim, for the curse represented no boundaries, consuming all life in its wake. And those who sought to flee from that curse followed, unyielding, for its reach was vast and its grasp inescapable. The silver would burn in the hands of the guilty, and none could escape its judgment. And Alugah prophesied that Judas himself would walk among the ruins of men, bearing witness to the destruction he had sown. His eyes aflame with the fire of his curse would behold the wars, the famine, and the plague, yet no tears would fall, for his sorrow was boundless and his hope exhausted. He would walk unseen by most, yet his presence would be felt as a chill in the air or a shadow at the edge of the light. He would be drawn to the silver coins wherever they lay, a specter haunting the greed of men. In their dreams, those who possessed the coins would see his face, pale and hollow, and feel the weight of his despair. And Judas would approach the cursed, whispering truth too terrible to bear, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of anguish. Yet his words would not bring redemption, only deeper despair, for his was a voice of unending judgment. And the Lord revealed that the curse of the silver would never cease, for as long as men desired wealth over righteousness, the shadow of Judas would linger. His presence would remind them of the price of betrayal, yet they would not heed the warning. Yet Alugah spoke of a day when the earth would be purged and the curse would be cast into the abyss, never to rise again. The skies would clear and the rivers would run pure, and the silver would be melted and lost forever. Until that day, the prophet warned, the coins would bring ruin to all who touched them, and Judas' name would be a byword for treachery and despair. And Judas, eternal in his wandering, would continue to walk, his burden never lifted, his curse